All right, welcome to another edition of the Five Star Zone. Rico Beard, Harold Shelton from the Big Ten Network joining me like he always does each and every week as we get ready to preview Big Ten Week 3. And Harold, honestly, not a ton of great games. It really isn't. A lot of check games, as I like to call them, where a lot of teams are going to come in and make about 700 to $1 million to come and just take an ass whooping. There's really no other way to put it. Don't lose these games because these are the embarrassing ones. If you do lose them, you just want to go out there. You want to win. You want nobody to get injured. And I guess you really don't want to run any type of plays that other team can see. You want to keep everything to yourself. This is more so repetition. This is more so just glorified practice. But we do have a couple of games, though, not falling into that scale. So let's start with, I guess, one that looks great on paper. It looked really good on paper. It was Wisconsin and Alabama taking place. And when you look at this game, they're going to be at Alabama. What are we expecting? Because the Bama team with Kalen DeBoer, I don't really know what they are. I know what Alabama was. I know what Alabama wants to be. But I also know that Alabama, I mean, it was people out there saying they hope that they hit that Powerball so they could just pay off the coach, fire him, and move on, and maybe get Nick Saban to come out of retirement.
Yeah, they're different down there. That's for sure.
Right.
But I think for Wisconsin, in the Luke Fickell era has not gone according to plan.
No.
And as a program, they're used to always being a top 25 team and always used to having an identity of running the ball, playing good defense. And we really haven't seen that consistently in these 3 years so far. I mean, when you look, they've lost 7 in a row against ranked teams, 15 out of 17 against ranked teams. And when you look at how they run the ball, it's a lot of by committee. The quarterback gets involved, which I think could help against Alabama because we saw against Florida State they had some trouble stopping the run. So I feel like Wisconsin's path to victory is trying to play keep away and seeing if you can run the ball. The problem is they just haven't been able to do it as well as they would like.
Yeah, something about this Luke Fickell Wisconsin team. Like, Harold, sometimes coaches don't fit the old school program narrative where, man, Wisconsin was you went out there and you just offensive lineman went to the league and you're right. You just buried people. You just ran and you knew Wisconsin was going to run and you couldn't stop them. He comes in. It's a little bit different. He's trying to air the ball out a little bit more, not really play, in my opinion, Wisconsin football. So I don't know if that means the fans are just going to turn on him. Because eventually, I always go back to Rich Rodriguez. Rich Rodriguez had a great plan. He just took it to the wrong school. Michigan wasn't about that. As a matter of fact, ironically enough, Sharon Moore's trying to take them back there. We'll get to that a little bit later. But he's trying to go back to the old bowl, 3 yards in the cloud of dust. Any chance for this Wisconsin team to really go in there and pull off an upset? Because I think they're like 20-point underdogs, 21-point underdogs.
I think it'll be tough sledding for sure. And again, to your point, Fickell brought in Phil Longo from North Carolina, who was a spread OC, and we saw it didn't work. And to his credit, he said they went 2 years and said, you know what, this ain't going to work. We're going to bring in Jeff Grimes from Kansas. He's more of a run-first guy. And so they are trying to do that more. I just don't know if they have the horses to go win a game down there in week 3, especially if Billy Edwards doesn't play. Which he hasn't played since the opener. I think Danny O'Neill's got some moxie to him, but that seems like a really tough spot for a guy making his second start with the program. I know he started a lot at San Diego State a year ago, but this is a different level. It's going to be tough sledding.
And the other game that I think probably this one should be more competitive. This is one that I'm really looking forward to. Unfortunately, if you're a Big Ten fan, get used to this. You're going to have to stay up late Saturday night to see this. This game kicks off at 10:30 Eastern time. At least it's 9:30 your time, Harold. But it's Minnesota traveling to Cal. Minnesota, 2.5-point favorite in this game. I'm always leery when Big Ten teams got to cross the Mississippi because normally they don't do well out on the West Coast. Now, I know they've added some West Coast teams. Cal probably, a little bit of revenge because I think they think that they should have been in the Big Ten. They should have been a part when the Big Ten took away some of the Pac-12 teams. But when you look at this Minnesota team, PJ Fleck going out to Cal, what should we expect in this one?
Well, if Minnesota gets their way, they should have the ball for 38, 39 minutes and keep Cal's offense off the field. That's kind of what PJ Fleck has done since he's gotten to Minnesota. And even when he had a role in at Western, it was, we're going to run the ball, we're going to shorten the game, limit possessions. And Cal's got a really good freshman quarterback on the other side. So the best way to neutralize him is not have him get on the field. The problem is Darius Taylor left the game against Northwestern State early. Don't really know what the status is going to be for that game. For that game, and he's pretty much been the workhorse for them. Obviously, 30 carries in the first game against Buffalo. They've used him as a receiver, so a lot of the offense revolves around him. And then you got a guy making his first road start, Drake Lindsey at quarterback. So it's definitely a step up in competition from what they've had the previous two games. And I think a lot is going to be determined on Taylor's health, because if he can't go or is limited, I think that makes it a complete wild card.
Yeah, I mean, how do you pronounce the Cal quarterback's last name?
Yeah, I'm not even going to try.
Okay. But yeah, he freshman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, true freshman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's out there putting up some nice stats in this game. The game is going to be at home. Do you think anything about traveling out there, or is that just me coming up with an old wives' tale?
No, there's something to that. And I think teams who aren't used to it kind of have to try and figure out different ways to do it. Now, I will say, I know PJ took his team out and beat Oregon State a few years ago when he was in Minnesota. Right. Last year, they went to UCLA and won a tight game. So he's at least had success going out west and winning games like that when a lot of Big Ten teams haven't.
Okay. Like I said, some of the other games, I really don't see, I don't think anything is going to happen. I do want to move to the local teams here, Michigan State. And I didn't get a chance to really talk to you about what happened last week. One team rose to the occasion. It took a while. Lord knows it took a while. I didn't get home till about 1:30 in the morning. But Aiden Childs, 5 touchdowns, co-Big Ten player of the week, no interceptions. It kind of, Harold, he looked like the person that everybody's been waiting to see. He looked like that guy. He had a couple of scrambles where it looked like the play was busted, and he turns around, and next thing you know, he's running down the field. I think me and every other State fan was screaming, please don't fumble the ball. He didn't. No picks. He went out there. He got it done. I guess is this a turning point for Aiden Childs, and should we expect this? Is this now the new normal for him, or was this, you think, a one-off?
See, I feel like it's too early to say it's a turning point because I have to see him stack games together. We saw last year against Maryland, he had a really good performance. And then the Boston College game came a couple weeks later and he throws 3 picks. Then he has another really good performance against Iowa a few weeks later. And then we don't really see that Aiden Childs for the rest of the year. Now, granted, he's got better weapons around him this year than he did a year ago. The run game is better, so he doesn't have to do everything.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel like it's still too early to say this is what we should expect going forward. I think for Michigan State fans, if that is, then I think it changes your season dramatically. But I feel like I have to see it. And, that starts with even Saturday. It's a game you're supposed to win, probably 4 touchdown favorite or so. And
I don't even know if they got a number for that because I guess Division II, or I don't know what you call it now, but.
Yeah, FCS. Yeah. So I was looking at Bill Connolly's S&P, and they're kind of on par with Western Michigan, so one of the better FCS teams at least. So this isn't like Prairie View A&M from a year ago where you knew Prairie View had no chance. This is one of those games where I wouldn't be shocked if it was sloppy or ugly for a quarter and a half, maybe 2 quarters, and then they pull away second half. But that's a game where you have better athletes. Don't make mistakes. put the ball on the money to Marsh and Kelly and McCray and those guys and start stacking games together. And then we could say, oh, this is the 4-star recruit. This is the top 100 recruit, all of the hype. Now I see it. And when you get to see it game after game after game.
It's funny you mentioned Nick Marsh. What do you make of the fact that, I mean, as you know, you at the Big Ten Network, occasionally you just get the athlete with the personality who tells it like it is. Nick Marsh comes into the press conference and was like, he went screaming in the locker room, you need to get me the damn ball. And he pulled a Keyshawn Johnson and, he was angry. Now, he ended up, at one point, I thought that Aiden Childs was targeting him too much. But then at the end of the game, as you saw, even on the 2-point conversion, that Nick said he really wanted, but he knew he couldn't have it, because he drew like 4 people with him on the crossing route. They all follow him going to the right. And then that's when you see Kelly going left and he gets the touches. As a matter of fact, it was Kelly and the tight end were both in the same area. Childs could have threw either one of them and both could have caught the 2-point conversion. But what do you make of Nick Marsh being a little more vocal, saying, hey, I need to be an active part of this offense?
He's 100% right. And I think it was probably personal for him because he missed the Boston College game a year ago. And that loss kind of sent their season into a tailspin. And then, you saw in the first half, he catches a slant at like the 7 and then drags 2 or 3 dudes in for a touchdown. So, at that point, it's like, okay, like I'm him, as the kids would say, like, why am I not getting the ball more? And, to Childs' credit, he tried to get it to him, but at the same time, he didn't necessarily put the ball in harm's way. It was either going to Marsh or no one was going to catch it. So I did appreciate the maturation shown by Childs there. And we've seen Marsh, he can get by people. He was several yards behind the DB on that touchdown, that long touchdown to tie the game in the third quarter. I don't know if you're going to find too many better receivers in the conference than him. It's just a matter of Childs linking up with Marsh when he is open, because the downfield throws, he made that one, but he's missed on several in these last 2 years.
Yeah, he had a couple guys that he did not see open, and he missed on the passes. But I want to switch over to the defensive side, and then we'll get to Michigan. But I don't know what to make of this MSU defense, because they have yet to put together all 3 phases of the game. Against Western Michigan, you saw defense, they were out there. They were outstanding. Offense, sputtering. Special teams worked because the new kicker came in, kicked a couple field goals. So you're like, okay. In this game, the offense clicked. Special teams really clicked. Alante Brown had 100 kickoff yards, averaging 50 yards a carry, didn't fumble, didn't get hurt. Those are 2 big pluses for Alante Brown, because either he fumbles the ball or he's out, gets tackled, he's out for the year. But the defense was non-existent. Lonergan looked like Josh Allen out there. He looked like Tom Brady, Joe Montana. He couldn't miss. Honestly, and maybe it's just me, I thought Bill O'Brien made a horrific move at the end of the first overtime and not going for 2. You got the ball last, you go for 2, you walk off, and you hop on the bus, you sing the Boston College fight song, everybody's happy. He kicked the extra point, and when he did that, I'm like, he may have just lost the game, and he ended up losing the game. Would you have gone for 2, first of all, if you were Bill O'Brien?
I think I would have, especially on the road, the way my offense was humming most of the day. I think if I have one play to win the game right there, I think I'll just go ahead and do it. I see the logic in that, Michigan State had trouble scoring touchdowns, like the drive before when Michigan State could have got a field goal to win it. The defense was getting after Childs, and then before that, they held him to field goals. So, I get the logic, but if my offense is the better unit and I'm on the road and I got one play to win the game, I'm going to put the ball in my offense's hands.
But now, going back to the defense, look, Jordan Hall was Defensive Player of the Week, but, man, they kept him busy. But they just, like I said, Lonergan looked like a genius. They were able to slow the running game down. Turbo Richard didn't do much, 13 carries, 55 yards. He had a touchdown. I think it was in overtime, and then he had a touchdown he should have had, but Hall makes him fumble, punches it out, which is one of the reasons why I think he ended up being Defensive Player of the Week. If you're MSU, Here was the funny thing about it. I'm leaving the game. I'm like, man, how come they didn't blitz? How come they didn't blitz? How come they didn't blitz? Only to find out they actually did blitz. Their blitz was useless. It was like wet tissue paper.
Yeah, rushing the passer certainly been an issue for them, and it looks like it might be the second year in a row of that. And when your run defense is good, which it has been through 2 weeks, I think they've allowed 96 yards total on the ground the first 2 weeks. So it's a lot of third and longs, but you got to get off the field, and they just haven't had a chance to do that. But I will say, I think the BC offense, they schemed up some really good stuff. Quarterback, I don't know if you'll see too many that are better than him on that schedule that Michigan State has. To the point,
I don't know how Alabama let him go. I just don't.
Same. And to that point, Jonathan Smith said in the press conference, "Hey, I made a cut up of BC's offense and I gave it to Brian Lindgren. Like, hey, look at some of this stuff. Like, they ran some good stuff." So he was clearly impressed with the schemes that are being put out there. And maybe we'll see some of those plays going forward to kind of help the MSU offense. But, hopefully this isn't a trend, but it certainly looks like it. And for whatever reason, they just can't seem to get home, whether it's blitzing a linebacker, whether it's blitzing a DB. It seems like there was always a counter for it. So guys are going to have to win more one-on-one so they don't have to do that and leave that back end open, which has been an issue considering Nakai Martinez has been out and the corners have been beaten pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, I always laugh because, look, I know what the portal giveth and the portal taketh away, but I'm like, man, seems like Chuck Brantley may have picked the wrong thing. He went for the money because he would be starting right now. Instead, he's on the bench at Miami. So I'm just saying. All right. But, yeah, Michigan State, Youngstown State. I'm assuming that maybe we'll see all three facets come together. But as you said, Youngstown State's not a pushover team. Definitely not Prairie View. Like I said, I want to see some sacks. I want to see getting off the field on third downs. Heaven forbid you have a 3 and out. I think that is allowed. I got to check the rule books, but I do think you can have a 3 and out. But the team didn't panic. Before we get to Michigan, I do wonder this, and I want to get your opinion, Harold. I know we have a ways to go, but this game reminded me of a couple of games. Well, actually, it reminded me of early in the D'Antonio tenure. Not a lot of people were sold on him. Michigan State was kind of still same old Spartans. They were meandering through. They were average. And then they played Notre Dame. And I'm not saying Boston College is at the Notre Dame status, but he went, and that was the Little Giants game. And they found a way to win that game. And in my world, everything changed for Mark D'Antonio, sans the heart attack he had after the game. But it was, whoa, I didn't see this. I've never seen this before. And then everything started clicking. He started winning. He won over the fan base. And he became the MSU coach that now everybody looks at should be in the MSU Hall of Fame. But I remember before Little Giants, I often said, if Little Giants had failed, I think they would have ran him out of town. I'm going to land the plane. I say all that to say, I think Spartan fans had a to-go bag ready, that they were ready to just say, I'm done with this program. I'm done with Jonathan Smith. We found a way to lose this game. We can't win these games. It's a night game. It's NBC. The world is watching, and we embarrassed ourselves on national TV. And then the second overtime, and then Aiden Childs gets hurt, and you're like, oh my goodness, he comes back in. And the next thing you know, he hits Kelly for the 2-point conversion, and the place just erupts. Could this be his Little Giants type of moment?
It certainly could be. And I would say after the run where they, were 2013 to 15, where they were always playing big games and they beat Oregon, lost to Oregon, still had good seasons. I would say after that, their non-conference game has usually decided how the season's going to go. Because if you remember, there were a couple games with Arizona State that they let get away late in the fourth quarter, and they never recovered from them, and they became very average. Then last year with BC, it was a similar situation. Winnable game, you lose it, season goes into tailspin.
The Miami.
2021, they go to Miami, they win that game, and it's jet fuel for their season. They got a ton of confidence. They're making a bunch of
Now,
plays.
see, the Miami game, I'm saving because I think that's the USC game coming up in a few weeks.
Okay.
Because the Miami game was on the road. Nobody really picked them to win at all. I think they had De'Aaron King, who at the time he was a Heisman Trophy candidate, and they just went down there and they beat the Hurricanes in Miami. Still no Mel Tucker out there in the shorts. Because I remember saying, like, bro, you realize had you lost, you would have got roasted. He was like, hey, man, it was hot down there. But I'm going to save that one for that. But, yeah, you're right. It's the non-conference game that kind of dictates the tone. So I'm hoping that this will dictate the tone. Hopefully they got a lot of 50-50 games. They just won one of their 50-50 games. You should handle Youngstown State. And then you get two more back-to-back, both on the road. USC, bye, and then Nebraska. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I was just kind of like, man, maybe this is his little Giants moment where maybe the fan base will finally start to embrace him because I don't think that they really have.
No, I think that's completely fair. And, I don't know if a lot of people knew about him at Oregon State. He's not a guy that's going to be in the media and talk a lot. And he doesn't have a ton of personality that we at least see. Like, he might have it behind the scenes, but I don't know if the fans necessarily see it. So they needed something to, kind of say, okay, this is our guy. I see progress. I'm willing to ride it out. And now, kind of similar to Childs, like, I need to see more. Like, this was a step. This was nice, but, like, put it together this week. Put up a nice showing against USC. Maybe split those two road games you were talking about with USC and Nebraska. And now let's stack and let's keep going. So yeah. I do think this was a very, very big win for him and the program just because it was lacking juice for the last 4 years pretty much.
I look at 3 of the next 4 games. I think if he really wants to solidify what this team is, Youngstown State I'm including, at USC, at Nebraska, and then UCLA at home for homecoming. He's got to win 3 of those 4 games, I think, if he really wants to get this crowd invigorated and really start to believe in this program. Losing the 2 road games, probably not going to do it. You got to go out there and take at least one of those, and then you get to UCLA, who they just kind of flounder. I don't know what's going on with the Bruins, but let's go to the other team in Michigan. Michigan goes on the road. Sharon Moore goes back to his alma mater, but they lose to John Mateer, Oklahoma Sooners, 24-13. And really, the game wasn't as close, in my opinion, as that score. Oklahoma could have scored more if it wasn't for the roughing the kicker and if it wasn't for the muff punt. And then Michigan scores, kind of a garbage touchdown late. They dominated Michigan. They held Bryce Underwood to 8 completion, 9, but his wide receiver made that circus catch. So we're going to count it, but he wasn't looking like the same guy. He didn't look like the golden child. He didn't look like, oh my God, the September Heisman. He had to give that thing back because he looked normal. He looked like a freshman. And I told people, quit acting like this kid is going to come out there and do something because he's going to go on the road and he's going to get his feelings hurt. You saw him and Hayes getting into it on the sideline. I'm okay with that. That's just the competitive nature. I'm not going to sit here and bash him. My only thing is I would just simply say, hey, son, there's a camera dedicated just to you. And working at the Big Ten Network, somebody's job is to follow him around. Be careful what you do because the world is always watching. And you can say something. You can yell at somebody. You yell at your coach, yell at the teammate. You slam a helmet down on the bench, and it's going to be front page news. But looking at this Wolverine team, I don't think the problem was him. But I'm going to ask you, so much so was said on the radio this week. Do you feel like the offensive coordinator and the head coach, Sharon Moore, who won't be there this week because he's serving his first of 2-game suspension, are they holding him back? And if so, why?
The game plan I thought was really weird last week. I thought we might see something similar to New Mexico where they actually threw it more than they ran it. And I think it was 52% passing and 48% rushing against New Mexico. And that went up to 55% rushing against Oklahoma in the game that they were down most of the way. So I didn't really get the game plan there. It seemed like it was a lot of running into stacked boxes, and when they did let Underwood throw it, it was either all or nothing type throws. Like he had the big one to McCulley, and then everything else was really short. I didn't see the intermediate passing like they had against New Mexico. I know Marlon Klein was out. Appeared to be his security blanket. The tight end obviously is a big part of that Michigan offense, and he wasn't there. But I just didn't get the game plan. I really didn't. I was surprised by it. And I saw earlier this week that Chip Lindsey said he was going back and looking at the Bellevue film from Underwood when he played and seeing if there's some stuff in there that they can implement in this game plan to kind of have him be more comfortable. But I thought that he just didn't have the horses with him. Like the receivers outside of McCulley really weren't getting open. And outside of one, tight end was hurt. And outside of one Justice Haynes run, the offense was pretty non-existent. And it would just seem like a really confusing game plan. Like they didn't want Bryce to lose the game, but they were never in position to play that way. Like they weren't playing ahead where they had to play conservative and limit possessions. They were down, pretty much the entire game. So I thought that was just kind of weird to play that conservatively, even though you're losing.
Yeah, like I said, Oklahoma kind of set the tone, and if they didn't shoot themselves in the foot, this thing would have been a lot more. Where it probably could have easily been about 35 to maybe even 42-13. So I look at this. I think this is a get-right game against Central Michigan. And then, they're going to start going on the road. They're going to go on the road at Nebraska as well, and they won't have Moore. Do you think anything changes now that Moore has to serve these two games? Do you think anything is going to happen with Michigan where they're going to deviate and maybe try some new stuff since, Dad's not around?
I feel like it's hard to say. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it looked more like New Mexico in week one and Bryce is making some plays. But again, I think you have to factor in opponent. That's not Oklahoma in Norman. It's, back in the friendly confines of home against a MAC team. And they should do what they should do and, win that game pretty easily. I think we'll know the week after because Nebraska's got a really good secondary, again, on the road without Sharon. And we'll see if Bryce will be ready to go in that game. And, if he has a full deck, if the offensive line's healthy, if Klein's back, then maybe it looks different. And if it doesn't, then I think there's real questions as to what's going on here. Because you brought in Chip Lindsey to speed this thing up, to have it look more modern, and it really hasn't through in their main game, at least. New Mexico, they threw it around. Oklahoma, they didn't.
But here's another common denominator in both New Mexico and in this game. I'm not really impressed with this offensive line. This is not the same offensive line I'm used to seeing at Michigan. And now with what is it, El Hadi? El Hadi looks like he may be out. You already lost your tackle at the beginning of the season. This line ain't the same line that you saw in those playoff years. And I don't know if they can give him the protection. I don't know if they allow him to get to check down. It's just like almost that perfect storm because even if he did, man, your receivers aren't that great. So your main target is injured. But, yeah, that offensive line, I mean, that Hayes pretty much had 50 yards. He broke the one play. They caught Oklahoma in just a bad formation. But other than that, they bottled him up. They kind of had Bryce bottled up. And then Michigan trying to, do the little bubble screens, and they blew everything up.
Yeah, and it's just weird. It's weird seeing a Michigan team get beat up pretty good at the line of scrimmage because as we saw in the national championship year, they were able to overwhelm pretty much everybody. And even last year, there were times we saw it against USC, we saw it against Ohio State, we saw it against Alabama, where the offensive line was still good enough to impose their will on people, especially when you knew they weren't going to be able to throw the ball and they were still able to run it. But now you have this unicorn quarterback, and you aren't letting him do his thing, and you aren't running him. He only had 3 carries in the game, and one of them was a sack. And
Well, see, I
so
got a theory on that, and I do wonder if it's job security, because Sharon Moore said he kind of, I'm paraphrasing, but he made it sound like, look, we don't have the depth in the quarterback. We can't afford to get him injured. He's got to be out on the field. And I also took that as job security for him because, let's face it, he can't afford to get fired because he's got a show cause because of the NCAA penalty. So he gets fired. He's got to hope that one of his buddies hires him in the NFL because he can't go anywhere in college. So he has to keep this kid all right. He can't just let him run. He can't let him scramble. And he can't afford to get him hurt because I don't think that Jaden Davis is going to be that person that leads Michigan anywhere.
No, and I think that's fair. And to that point, then I think they have to spread it out more because I don't think they can play with these tight formations and have him, be special. So far it looks like he's been at his best when there's one tight end and there's three receivers and his field is spread and, the picture's not as cloudy. But when it's two tight ends, he's had a lot of issues. And like the numbers have backed it up. Like he's completing 63% when it's, one back, one tight end, three receivers compared to 40% when it's one back and two tight ends. So this is a situation where they need to put the ball in his hands, spread the defense out. And then with the lighter boxes, maybe Haynes breaks another one. Maybe you don't have to rely on just Bryce, but there's at least options there if it's more spread out.
So we will see, but that's week 3 for the Big Ten. What's that impressive stat you got for me? I know you got something. You always do. Don't let me down. Come on now. You got it.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard with this one. And again, I know we haven't really talked about it, but Saturday night, actually on the Big Ten Network, Kirk Ferentz likely will pass Woody Hayes for the most wins by a Big Ten head coach with 206, which is pretty remarkable that a coach has stayed for 27 years at one place and to break a record like Woody Hayes. And the fact that they would beat, assuming they beat UMass, it'd be the 64th different team that he's beaten since he's been at Iowa.
5 touchdown favorites, so yes.
Yeah.
Now, can they score 5 touchdowns? No.
I don't know, right? Could be some defensive special teams. But yeah, offensively, that could be a struggle. But just the fact that you could beat 64 different teams. I mean, a lot of coaches struggle to get 60 wins in general. So the fact that you could beat 64 different programs that's pretty special. And he's done it his way throughout. And, kudos to him for passing Woody. You tied him back in week 1, and now he's got a chance to set it.
Yeah, he's the epitome of slow and steady because nobody ever thinks of Kirk Ferentz when they think of the Big Ten, but they just find ways to win. They grind it out. It's never pretty. I can't recall the last time they had a high-powered offense. You may have to go back to what was my man Banks when they went to the Orange Bowl back then.
Banks.
Yeah, Brad Banks. Like that was the last time. Like they were like, oh wow. I mean, heck, even think about it. When Michigan State beat them in the championship game,
16-13. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had George Kittle on that team. Like they had some pros.
They did have George Kittle. Mm-hmm. Did they? No.
Pretty sure he was on that team, the 2015 team.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. But yeah, when I think of Iowa football, you really don't think that, they're around, but yeah, that would be impressive if he ends up getting that. Look at that. He's the stat guy. He got to make sure now. Was Kittle on the team?
Yeah, because I'm looking. He was on the team. He had 20 catches for 290 and 6 touchdowns that year.
I was about to say in that game. I was like, no.
Oh, no. No. I think that crazy Demetrius Cox play where he got it off the back of Iowa player. I believe that was Kittle. He got that off of.
Who would have thought in that play? I would have thought Cox would have made the league and been a superstar, not the guy who gave the ball up in George Kittle. The things you learn. See, Harold, this is why you're on the show, man. Right here, that information. Where else you going to get that? That's why you keep following and liking and subscribing and watching the 5-Star Zone. So, Harold, we're going to leave it on the high note because, you know what? Don't even try. You can't get any higher than that. For Harold Shelton, I'm Rico Beard. Thanks for watching the 5-Star Zone. We'll be back next week.